Okay, so welcome back everybody to the More Kingston Smith David's review. Look at the world of advertising, the first one of 2021. We had briefly flirted with actually meeting people, but now in the world of lockdown, we're back unfortunately doing this remotely. So welcome back to Jason. And also this time joined by the multi-award winning editor, Paul Watts. You're not allowed to cringe, Paul. You are that person. So you've done a lot of kind of iconic work over the years, and I wondered kind of how you found the last 9 months in terms of whether you were busy, whether you were doing the kind of work that you wanted to do, how lockdown played out for you.
Okay. Well, it's clearly been very different, super different. I just sort of think back to how the process has run from March time. It went extremely quiet for a while, and people were ringing us up and asking us to cut stock footage together and stuff like that, which is, you know, in its own way, it's a challenge, and it can be exciting because you're looking for fresh ways to do stuff. I don't think it doesn't require a £2 million budget script to land on your desk to get you excited. You know, I don't think it's like someone puts a nut in front of you, and you've got to figure out how to crack it.
Yep.
So I guess March, April time, I was doing some stuff with Nick Bell, Simon Rattigan, little, just sort of small ideas. How do you execute them? And a lot of it was to do with titles and sound effects and things like that, you know, and it really was just how do you keep your brain ticking?
Right.
Which I was really grateful for. Actually, I think it was really important to have something to think about other than the fact that all your staff have gone home and you've got an empty office. That was kind of crucial. And of course, in that time as well, outside of the work and cutting the jobs, we were really scrabbling around trying to figure out how to keep everyone talking to each other.
Yep.
Finding ways of delivering for clients when, you know, you haven't got everybody in the office. I mean, it's, you know, everyone's had this, haven't they? They've had the rug pulled out from under them and had to try and figure out how to make it work.
And is the remote thing the thing that's changed the most? Do you suddenly find, because editing, I assume, is quite a personal process between you and other individuals in a room. Has that been the biggest change for you?
Yeah. No, I think that, look, the biggest change on just a basic day-to-day level is, and this is something that everyone is going to relate to, so it's not specific to editing, is just the fact that there's been this disruption to going into your workplace, seeing all your team and the people that you just hang out with on a daily basis. I found that really weird to get my head around. But the editorial process, strangely, I think, as you just touched on, I'm sat in a room here. I've got my computer here in front of me with all of my Avid software on it. And when I'm actually cutting a job and I'm just looking at that, it doesn't really matter that I'm here or I'm in my office or wherever I am, I'm back working. So in those moments, the disruption kind of goes out the window. And I've been very fortunate in that, I guess, between March and now, I've had a good stream of work running through, as have a bunch of our guys, to sort of, which has kind of given us some continuance of reality, of our old reality a little bit. And my assistants in North London or East London, whoever it is who's assisting me on a given day, and although I guess without wanting to get too boring about data and moving media and stuff like that, it's a bit of a ball ache, I guess, because you've got to find ways of managing data in a way, whereas before there was just a bucket of it in the office and everyone could read it. We've had some sort of significant managing data issues to deal with, but once we'd risen above that by, you know, the beginning of the summer, cutting a job felt very much like it always used to, which I guess was about the time that regular work started coming back online a bit.
And how does the interaction between you and the director change, or hasn't it changed? It just presumably doesn't happen in a room. It now happens on something like this.
Most of the time we've been working remotely. Yeah, so, you know, I've got a director on the other end of a Zoom link, a little bit like this. We've kind of got Zoom working for us in a way with our Avids that means we can basically share our output from our screen as sort of one of these our director can look at it full frame, and it's pretty much like he's in the cutting room, actually. And I started doing this actually before lockdown, the beginning of the year, a couple of projects with Daniel Wolf, where Daniel's in LA, I'm in London. The client was actually in France on this particular one, pre-lockdown, and we were getting this sort of workflow working really well. So there is something actually going on right now where technology has kind of just about met this pandemic for us in a way that allows us to keep working, which is, I honestly believe if this had happened 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been a very different scenario, right?
Can I step in and ask a question? I've got a couple of questions, actually. The first one, have you found any benefit from the director not sort of pacing behind you? And I mean, I imagine directors, based on their personalities, probably have different sort of presence in the editing room. Without naming names, has there been anyone, have you had a sense of it being slightly better sometimes with you being remote?
I don't know about better. I mean, there's a few directors I work with who have to be in the room every minute of every day, and there's no point in them not being in the room, because they need to understand every single lever you're pulling on and every button you're pushing, and the full mechanism of it. And there are some who are significantly more like, you do your thing, you cook the meal and let me have a look at it and see what I think of it, you know. It's my favorite metaphor, really. When they're shooting, they go into the shops and they're buying the ingredients, and the recipe was the script that, you know, they were given to go to the shops with, right? And then we cook the meal. So some guys and girls are very happy for me to sort of present them with a meal, and so the process really with on those projects hasn't really changed, actually. I don't think. I'll cut a spot, I'll send it to them as a link, they'll take a look at it and make comments, and we'll have a few days backwards and forwards like that. And for the guys that feel like they need to be there all the way through the process, I've done one or two things. With a couple of people, I've gone to work over the course of the summer, which was interesting, like late summer. We have an office with 15 cutting rooms in it, and it's pretty much deserted. And so there's me in a 20-foot by 20-foot room with one person, both wearing masks, windows are open, and the process goes like it always went. I guess this is what we've tried to achieve, is finding a way of making sure the process can go in a way that allows you to fulfill the work, whatever it is. And I think for different people that takes a different shape, right?
My second question then, to use your own lovely metaphor, have you been shopping in the last 9 months? Have you been on set?
No, I haven't. I haven't been on set. No, but I tend not to. Most of the directors I work with either don't want me there, don't need me there. I'm also not a fan of it. I think there's something a bit dangerous about editors on set.
That's interesting, because it's
there's
a lot of your senior colleagues who feel the other way. What's your thinking there? Well,
I mean, on the simplest of levels, if I'm sat in the corner of a studio and I know that getting one particular shot was an absolute bitch, and 9 hours was spent getting it, and there was blood, sweat and tears over it, I'm going to look at that shot, I believe, in a very different way, thinking we've got to get this shot in because it's so important and it was so hard to get. I want to look at it as a shot like all the other shots, because that noise is irrelevant to me. I just want to look at what's in there, you know.
That's really interesting. So you feel it affects your ruthlessness in a sense?
I don't know whether it's ruthlessness. I'd like to think it's more just, you know, everything. I think it's just everything you look at, you got to just take it on face value of. So I used to do a lot of work with Frank Budgeon a long time ago, and Frank had this requirement when he was looking at props. If he wanted to look at the mugs, and a prop man would bring him a mug, he couldn't deal with that. They'd have to take a Polaroid of it and show him that, because it's two-dimensional. It's only ever going to exist two-dimensionally on the screen, right? So don't show me the thing. Show me that, right? That's how you can judge it. Like, if you're going to be really particular and specific about it, I guess I'm talking about a similar a similar thing. I don't want to see the reality of it. I want to see the expression of it as it'll end up being.
That's really interesting, Paul. Really interesting.
But so there was one other thing about, we were talking about people coming into the cutting room and how that process goes. The thing that I am finding easier is the back end of it, actually. So once we've got a cut and we've understood what it is we're making, and we've built it and we've polished it and it's all nice, and we present it to agency take it to client, that end of it, touch wood, so far has been far and away more straightforward. There would often be a situation where there'd be a very protracted process of a 1 or 2 week period with more and more groups of people camping out in the cutting room for days on end, occasionally not necessarily paying a lot of attention. And it felt like an unnecessary use of time. And I think that what has come out of this is I think our time's being used in a more focused fashion now, I guess because we're more in control of it.
Well, or is it a function of actually because of the problems that COVID brings and the problems probably in terms of shooting and stuff, there's a desire to get things through the system quicker, maybe? Maybe.
I mean, yes, it could be that. I mean, look, the back end of stuff tends to be prescriptive, mandatory, certainly more mandatory than it was 10 years ago, you know. Right. It's like, now it's like that needs to be changed, and it needs to be changed in this way. And actually doing that, you know, responding to a prescribed change is actually extremely straightforward.
And after the initial couple of months, did you feel that in terms of the kind of the volume and quality of the stuff that you were seeing went back to something like normality?
I kind of live under a rock, Graham.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't watch very I spend all day looking at a bloody screen. I mean, you know, I tend not to.
But in terms of the stuff you were being asked to quote on.
No, we definitely returned to sort of some level of normality, I think. I mean, I did a couple of, but at the same time, there's been a couple of really interesting projects that have come out of last year. You know, people's desire to find out how to express how they're feeling about this shit, how they process it, you know, and there are all sorts of examples of that all over, I don't know, you know, various platforms and stuff like that. And I think some of that stuff has been fascinating, actually, which is the opposite of what you've just described. It's like, you know, I think for me, a lot of things have been shaken up, and I did a short film about the dancing plague in Strasbourg from like 1518, right? But now people dancing and expressing how they're feeling about lockdown, and how, you know, the parallels between that and the plague of 1518. And it was fascinating, amazing process. 5 weeks. We spent 5 weeks making basically an art piece, I suppose. And what a great opportunity is that? I don't think that's the kind of opportunity that would come around in a regular year, you know?
And I think definitely there's a part where people have had to think outside the box, Paul. So maybe that reflects that. And I suppose, look, we're sitting here the first week of January, just having been locked down again. What feels like a reasonably dark moment. What are your thoughts looking ahead for the next 3 to 6 months?
I think it's best not to look ahead to the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
I have friends who would ring me in March and tell me that the army was congregating on Clapham Common, and, you know, other things, other catastrophes, and, you know, like, and I feel like in many ways that's happening again now. So right now, what I want to do is make a cup of coffee and sit at my table and enjoy it for 10 minutes, and then come up and do the work and concentrate on that. I'm really not and it's kind of odd, because beginning of the new year is normally a time where you rub your hands together and think, what am I going to do this year? How's this year going to play out? What plans should I be making? I really don't want to go there right now. And I don't think I wouldn't suggest it's a great idea for anybody to be doing.
I completely agree. Funnily enough, my New Year's message, which I sent out to everyone a couple of days ago, was along very similar lines. Realism rather than pessimism, but the difficulties we face aren't going to go away this year, in all likelihood. Now, to a certain extent, taking what you just said, you can plan to that, and I don't mean that you should plan to that. I just mean you should expect that, and then, as you quite rightly say, just enjoy your next cup of coffee. Just find joy in wherever you can, because it's there's no point. The one thing you absolutely cannot do at this moment in our lives, forget about work for a minute, I mean in our lives, is just pause and wait for things to get better, because before you know it, another year of your life has gone by.
Yeah.
And it's just really important to find out what you can to enjoy in 2021, because
absolutely,
it's going to be difficult.
And I will hold my hand up and say I'm an absolute pandemic cliche. I'm really into my sourdough. My sourdough is off the charts. It's fantastic. And I'm baking 4 or 5 times a week.
It's very easy to say that when no one can eat it, Paul.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean no one can eat it?
Well, we can't eat
We
it.
can't.
No, you can't. I can. It's fantastic.
Show me your sourdough.
So in the middle of summer, I had a similar conversation with Dave Dye. I don't know if you guys know Dave.
Yeah.
He's an awesome creative. And he wanted to get into sourdough. And I found myself one day in the summer getting on my motorbike and taking him a little portion of starter, giving it to him, socially distanced, giving him my starter. And he started baking bread as well. So, I'm just trying to, I could send you some starter, Jason, and you could make your own.
I think maybe this is what we need to do. Yeah.
I read somewhere, Mr. Watts, that you became an editor because you didn't have enough money to travel the world and fish. So I'm assuming that somewhere there's a kind of loaves and fishes part of what you've been doing in lockdown.
Sorry, I was so bum swizzled by the way you steered the beginning of that sentence. I didn't hear the end of it. Can you ask me the question again?
How much fishing are you doing?
Oh, do you know what I did? I did a week at the beginning of September. Went up to Scotland, actually. Had a week in Scotland, up on the River Spey.
All right. Give me a shout next time you're heading up. Because
I will. I spent a few months in Glasgow in 2011. It would have been a while back. I loved it. I thought Glasgow was a wonderful city. I loved it. Is that
a true quote or just something you made up? Just to explain why you became an editor.
I never said that.
Can I say it's on the Cut and Run website?
That's amazing. I'm gonna have to have a chat with Steve Gandolfi about that. Maybe I said it as a joke. Yeah, I don't know. But actually it would be entirely true, of course. And now I can go up to Scotland and fish for a week on the Spey. So it's amazing.
I'm not sure you're allowed to go to Scotland at the moment. But
not now I'm not. Not now I'm not. But I think fishing is a good opportunity for travel. Work and fishing are the two things that really allow me to travel in a way that I think most guys are happy traveling, which is having something to do when you get to the other end.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not a guy who could sit on a beach. So I'm either walking over a mountain to get to a river and then wading through the river looking for a fish, or I'm sitting at an avid doing what I'm doing now. But the travel for work, I guess going forward, that'll disappear. I've done quite a lot of jobs in the last 6 months for the States. I've done quite a lot of work with San Francisco, and it's an odd feeling having jet lag sitting in your house, because obviously you've changed your hours, so you start working at 4 in the afternoon and you finish at 1 or 2 in the morning. But I'm not getting on airplanes, so those tough budgets are under less pressure, and there's less bums on seats in airplanes, and all those things are such compelling reasons.
And you don't think that will go back? You think you will be in 2023 still cutting in America from your house?
Well, I think, if it went back to exactly like it was, wouldn't that be a terrible, terrible wasted opportunity, man?
Probably.
I mean, but this plays back to what we were talking about before. Sometimes I think you have to be there. If something's really hard and gnarly and difficult, yes. But I would throw caution to the wind and say that actually most advertising projects are not that complicated. Not that complicated.
I think you're right, and I think that if we can change the defaults, you don't have to change the you don't have to say never, but the idea of it being a default that certain people attend when they're not required is ridiculous. You've got various initiatives at the moment trying to make filmmaking more environmentally friendly, and the key component is the amount of air travel. If you take that out of the equation, you improve so much more than you can by having no plastic on set and all of those things. Worthwhile as they are, it's a kind of ridiculous gesture compared with, if half the fucking agency has flown to LA for no reason.
20 people flying business halfway around the world.
Crazy.
Well, my other quote from the Curtain Run website is, you describe yourself in one word as inarticulate, Paul, and I'm kind of delighted to say that you haven't been. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll probably wrap it up there and hope to see you back in a cutting room soon.
Amazing.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Graham. Cheers, Jason. Lovely to see you both.